Day. The topic is Malcolm X in New York. And of course, we have to talk about his experiences with Malcolm X, Kwame Leo Lillard. And of course, Kwame, let's see if we can pick up where we left off. And more specifically, let's talk about his assassination. Why don't you start where you wish to start and talk about it from there?
Well, I think the important to say is that after 3 years with Malcolm, listening to him, he left the country for a while. And during that period of time, obviously, he was growing. He was beginning to question some of his doctrine. So it was that in itself was a lesson, is that you always question doctrine. And what that's the second part of Malcolm's teaching to me, is that liberation is not a destination, it is a journey, and you constantly are looking and questioning your paradigms and your ideologies. Let nothing stay as it is. Question everything. So during the period when Malcolm had split with Elijah and the very simplistic concept of Islam, I was understanding the need to look at a bigger world too. So I had friends that were Iranians. I was in graduate school with Indian kids and Buddhist kids. So that was expanding my horizon in terms of ideology of spiritualism. And so when Malcolm came back to New York City in '64, my wife was pregnant with my first child, and that he was born on January 16th, Leo, number 3. And that was in a snowstorm. It was like 18 inches of snow on the ground, and we had to trudge in the subways to the hospital to see him. But Malcolm was still doing what he was doing, and he had moved from the Harlem at Mecca to 125th Street to a bigger ballroom that he rented, and that was called the Audubon Ballroom. I went to one of those meetings, but I missed the meeting in where he was taken from us by about 3 hours. I was going to go, but I got involved with many things in my community.
So you really could have been.
I could have been there because I had been there 2 weeks before. But that particular day, I was not there. It is fascinating to watch the New York City police, the FBI, and the CIA the day he was taken from us. It was predicted by the Malcolm X organization that there'd be a move to destroy Elijah Muhammad's mosque, right? To prove that Malcolm was killed by Muhammad, and Malcolm's men then destroyed Muhammad's mosque. Ironically, nobody in Harlem was duped by it, because the people in Harlem knew that this was a CIA plot in the first place. This is the common feeling in Harlem. And as perchance, I went to Harlem to look what a mosque was. And on every rooftop, ringing that entire block, was New York Police Department. Every rooftop had 2 to 3 uniformed officers with rifles and weapons, right, around Muhammad's mosque, supposedly making sure that didn't happen. But of course, you know, it happened.
It did.
And so that really drove the nail in to everything Malcolm had talked about. Is that their wickedness and spirit and people in high places who do not intend to let go of the reins of power from the founding fathers to that very day. And the racism is part of a bigger juggernaut called America. And that everything is orchestrated. This is what Malcolm taught us. Everything is orchestrated. There are no accidents. All right? And so the people in Harlem were not surprised at all when the mosque was burned up and blown up with all those policemen around there.
The mosque was actually blown.
Yeah, to make it justify the fact that now the revenge has happened. The Elijah's people killed Malcolm, and Malcolm's people blew up the mosque, Elijah's mosque, and that
was a chain that caused an effect.
Right. And so the funeral was phenomenal. I mean, I went to the funeral. I did go to that. I took slides of the funeral. It was probably 2 to 5 degrees above zero at the funeral, and people were absolutely uncomfortable. Hands almost frostbitten, feet almost frostbitten. Nobody got out of the line. It took you 3 hours to stand in line to see Malcolm's body. It took you just as long to go to actually the entourage to where he was buried. But nobody got out of line. Nobody complained. Nobody was bitter. It almost reminded me, believe it or not, of Rosa Parks' viewing this past year in D.C. They did us the same way in D.C. They made us stand outside for 2 hours to get in to see Rosa Parks' body. And they were harassing people, but nobody was upset. Nobody allowed the police to start an incident. And it was almost the same kind of feeling. I just thought about that, Brother Haney. But that's what we did. We sat in that cold, in the bitter cold, to see, as Oscar Davis called him, our shining prince. That's what Oscar Davis called him, our shining prince. I don't think nobody, except maybe Marcus, comes close to what maybe Paul Robeson, those 3 people, come close to what Malcolm meant to me as an African-American man involved in liberation. And that's a tall order, because there's many influences on us, but that nobody had that influence, I think, that Malcolm X has. And it's interesting when I look back at my life and people say, who was your major influence? My father talked about Marcus Garvey as his major influence. And as I became a man, I would say those 2 men also were my major influences, and Malcolm and Marcus.
Malcolm and Marcus.
I think Malcolm set the tone for how you do not be deceived by your oppressor. And that means sometimes you pay a price. And it's interesting that Malcolm said to us, and on some of his recordings, is he wanted to know and wanted King to know that probably America was going to take them both out, whether you're violent or non-violent.
Non-violent. It really didn't matter.
It didn't matter. It did not matter.
It didn't matter that he was a leader, and that's what America couldn't understand. Exactly. Is that didn't like the fact.
If you're token, like Clarence Thomas, you rise. You aspire to be all you can be, and you become all you can be that they want you to be. But if you take the Malcolm's position as a we're African people born in America, right? Then you get a different kind of flavor how the system responds to you, and how they see you, and how they view your threat ranking. And that's what he taught us to do.
Well, you know, looking back over the last 3 minutes that we have here, what would you say, in a real sense, is the legacy of Malcolm X? You know, we talked about Garvey, we talked about King, but what about Malcolm himself?
I would hate that he would become a cult figure, where we think he was perfect, because he wasn't perfect, obviously. But if you look at Malcolm's children compared to King's children, I mean, just compare those, okay? Malcolm's kids are doing so much better than King's kids. They seem to be on point. They seem to be producing. They seem to be contributing. They seem to be growing. They seem to be creating networks. Whereas where Martin's kids don't seem to be able to quite cut it. They don't seem to be able to take the daddy's legacy and build a network and take it to another level. I think that what the ultimate goal that Malcolm wanted all black men to do is just look at yourself as a very special man. What will you leave behind here? How will you dismantle the America that we know? Because he always said, America would never accept you in civil rights terms. You've got to become a human rights activist, because until they respect you as a human right, you have human rights, you can't have civil rights. As long as the Constitution says, he said, as long as you're 2/3 of a human being, 3/5 or 4/5, no civil rights are going to ever allow you to walk into the arena of mankind and hold your head up high, because someone has decided to fractionalize you. And Malcolm saying, he constantly said, no, never let anybody decide because you have African blood in you that you are not part of the human race. I think that's his legacy.
You know, last minute here, now, one thing in reference to King, a lot of folks who talk about King's assassination will tell you that their world came to an end that day. What was your attitude in reference to when you first learned of the assassination of Malcolm?
I thought that at this point, we need to never look back on anything he said with lightly. Now that he's gone, his words became more important. His blood stopped flowing in his body, but the fire in us really ignited. That was my feeling. They took him from us.
Made him
now
great.
I know exactly.
He became great by the very
now I know
fact of
everything he taught me. I would use the rest of my life and spread it to every person I talked to. Now,